today is a very important day and very important show.
So today we have none other than Senator David Shoebridge with us in the studio. Thank you so much, David, for joining us today. We would like to know generally, what are your comments about what is happening in Gaza and all the human rights violations that we see or we hear about?
We were appalled by the killings of civilians that Hamas engaged in, and we're appalled by that. And we called it out and called for peace. And then to see the state of Israel responding in the way it has, killing thousands and thousands of Palestinians, civilian Palestinians, women and children, bombing of civilian infrastructure, blowing up apartment blocks, and if you believe the Israeli military and the Israeli state, they have just commenced their war on Gaza.
If you protest or voice your opinion on social media against human rights violation in Gaza, immigrant community gets scared by such rumors and news. Why are you talking about Palestine? Are you ready to lose your citizenship? Don't write anything on social media. What would you say about it?
I've got to tell you, that is not the law, and it can't happen. If you attend a peaceful rally, if you attend a peaceful protest, and you make demands for peace and an end to the war, that can in no way impact your immigration status. Peter Dutton has been disgraceful in this, and he hasn't been clearly enough called out by the Prime Minister.
Why do you think there is such blatant inclination towards the perpetrator of violence and not with the innocent people who are suffering and are being massacred?
How is it that the Prime Minister will say only I stand with Israel and won't say that he also stands with the Palestinian people?
Exactly.
How can you not, by all means, if you want to be a friend, if the Prime Minister says he wants to stand with Israel, he should also clearly say he stands with the Palestinian people. And the only way of standing with both is to actually demand that the international community insists on a just peace and the end of the occupation. And that should be the demand of our Prime Minister.
Where are we Australians standing in terms of Palestine issues as united?
We have a government at both the state and the federal. They're both Labor governments. We have governments that seem to be saying they're only backing in one side of this conflict. And yet we have members of the Jewish community who identify with Israel. We have members of the broader community who identify with Palestine. We're a multicultural country. How could the government not at least be even-handed in this and say both communities matter?
Zahur Ahmed asking, Article 351 of Geneva Convention provide protection to a civilian population in a combat zone, but Israel is violating it by collective punishment, mass dislocation and starvation, etc. Do you think that Israel is committing war crimes?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the Israeli military is committing war crimes in Gaza. For example, the World Health Organization said that the demand that Israel made to evacuate the hospitals, 3 hospitals in the north of Gaza, was a death sentence to their patients that were there. And we've seen, in prior instances, and we've seen Israel be willing to bomb hospitals, be willing to bomb civilians and civilian centres. I know there's some contest at the moment about the most recent tragic bombing of the hospital, but in any event, the circumstances of the war where we're seeing that happen amounts to war crime. Collective punishment against civilians, withdrawing food and water and power and medicines to a civilian population. Making war on a civilian population is, as the questioner pointed out, in Article 3.51 of the Geneva Convention, that is a war crime too.
My question is, we talk about freedom of speech. In the modern era of social media, how do we share what we feel when the accounts and chats get blocked? It is happening a lot these days, actually. In last 1 or 2 days, it has been happening with all of us. So shadow banning isn't wrong without consent?
Well, I think that kind of shadow banning, simply for supporting Palestine, is an abuse of the platform's powers. And You should make a complaint through the complaints process and churn up their internal resources in their complaint process. But we need a lot of tougher laws to actually hold these social media accounts.
Okay, one critical question. I saw how Opera House was lit up to show solidarity with Israel. Why not Palestine? Colors of flag was lit up on Opera yet. If not Opera, why not choose some other location and do it to share the pain and sorrow of Australian Palestinian people? What do you say?
Well, of course we should, SHAFAQ. If you're going to light it up with the colours of Israel, how could you in a multicultural country like Australia with so many people having an affinity with the Palestinian people as well as the Palestinian diaspora, how could you not show the same care and concern about Palestinian lives? It makes people feel that in this case it was the state government, the state Labor government, like they don't think Palestinian lives matter as much. And I think that's causing division and hurt in our community. And I can tell you, regardless of what that man has chosen, the Premier, Chris Minns, regardless of what that man has chosen, I just want to remind you, I just came from a rally where there were more than 20,000 people from all across our society who absolutely and firmly believe that Palestinian lives matter.
And do you think Australian government will streamline refugee visa processing for Palestinians? This is from Ali. Thank you, Ali.
Well, yes, I think they should, but I think I don't see any actions happening. I did talk to the immigration minister. I had a meeting with him last week in the federal parliament, and he did say that anyone who is here on a temporary visa, on a tourist visa or another temporary visa, that there was it was his intention to ensure that those visas could be extended. And sometimes those visas say you can't apply for extension on shore.
Any last comments before we wrap up the show and pray for the sanity to prevail? But any last comments?
Look, no, other than to thank you both for doing this and for the community broadly. I know the Pakistan community feels this quite personally. I know there are a deep sense of empathy and connection with Palestine. And I'd say this, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to come out in a peaceful manner. You can be as loud as you like, but in a peaceful manner, show your solidarity for the people of Palestine and actually make that call to end the war. You know, peace should not be a radical demand.
Absolutely.
Okay, say with me, say together, free Palestine. Thank you so much, David.